Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Life Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Smith. And if you have not done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode. And if you love this podcast and want some more tips and tricks on how to improve yourself, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are a ton of instructional videos there. You can find the links below. But for today, my guest is Ted Zimnicki. He is a Canadian-born, American-bred coach, speaker, writer, and teacher. He's personally gone from morbidly obese to nationally ranked strength athlete, competing in strongman. Before deep diving into coaching and the fitness industry, Ted's career was in stage performance, including musical theater and opera. His current passion is bringing the same tools he used at the highest levels of sports performance to the stage performance world, as well as increasing the levels of health, fitness, and strength in all people around the world. He is currently in Phoenix, Arizona, where he and his wife, Miriam, run their online gym, High Note Performance, where they help people all over the world become the best versions of themselves. Ted, my friend, thank you very much for being on the show.
Absolute pleasure, Kyle. I'm so pumped. This is going to be great.
Absolutely. So can you give us a little introduction and tell us a little story about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you did a great job with the intro there. That's kind of my whole life in a nutshell. But I suppose to go a little bit deeper on some of that stuff, really my catalyst to get me to start doing what I'm doing now was really sort of three things in increasing intensity. So like you mentioned, I was morbidly obese growing up. The way that I like to phrase that is when I was 19 years old, I stepped on my bathroom scale and it literally broke. That's not an exaggeration. I stepped on it and I heard a pop in the scale and it wouldn't show me a number. I know that scale would go up to 350, so I was somewhere north of 350. But believe it or not, that wasn't enough to get me to start doing stuff. So number two was I was in music school at the time, a little college in upstate New York called Ithaca College. And Go Bombers, by the way, horrible name for a mascot, but still. And I was going to class and I went to sit down in one of those chair desk combo things wearing a button-down shirt. And like something out of a cartoon, right? I sat down and the bottom two buttons of my shirt just popped right off. Flew, in my memory, feels like flew 10 feet and hit my professor in the eye. Of course, that didn't actually happen, but in my memory, it feels that way. Super embarrassing. And I'm literally sitting there for the whole class, like frozen in terror and fear with my belly literally hanging out of my shirt. But that wasn't enough for me. What was enough, kind of the third piece here, was I was singing in what's called a master class, right? And that's when, for anyone listening who might not know, it's when you get up on stage and you sing a piece for a visiting teacher who's never seen you before, who's never met you before, and these are always public, right? So your friends come, your classmates come, your teachers come, and they're usually or they can be a big deal. And this one kind of was, because this dude had a big old fancy name. No, I won't tell you. But after I finished singing, he said, hey, you sound just great, but you'll never get hired being that fat. And that did it. That was enough for me. So once I got through the depression that brought, because naturally I was just shamed in front of everyone I knew and held dear, I feel extremely lucky that I had a couple of friends who were, more than willing to help me out and give me my first sort of steps into the gym. And they're still some of my best friends. Now we're at a more comparable level of fitness though. So we're like, hey, I bench pressed this today. Yeah, I squatted this, blah, blah. And we have friendly competition. So it's great. And then from that started working with coaches and trainers myself, so I could learn more, got, now more certifications than I care to talk about because the amount of money I've spent on it is a little nuts. But it's really become an incredible passion behind, coaching weight loss and of course working with the population that I'm really connected to. So stage performers, musical theater and opera singers, instrumentalists, actors, singers, dancers, all that type of stuff. And using really more high-level neurology, which is one of those certifications that I've continued to pay for because it's continuing education. but it's been really transformative for a lot of them, because what's good for your body is good for your mind, is good for your voice, good for your fingers, for whatever instrument you're playing. And it has all come together really nicely so far. And as I grow older, as my business grows older, as my knowledge grows deeper, it seems like things are only going up from here.
That's pretty awesome, dude. I love the overlap. I find that something that many entrepreneurs have, or business owners, or people that are very interested in business, is it's a creative outlet for a majority of people. So I find that like Rick Rubin, for example, I mention him a lot on this podcast because he has an awesome book. It's called The Creative Act, The Art of Being. And I find that the medium is different for everyone, but the creativity is there for everyone. So people always have a creative outlet to express themselves. And I find that business is similar to that. Same with fitness. It's a form of creativity and expression. How does your history as an opera singer and your business and your fitness, how is there an overlap? Where's the common denominator there?
Excuse me. I love that you use the word overlap, because I talk about that constantly. I sometimes think in Venn diagrams, just to see how it all overlaps. And as far as I can tell, at the most basic level, the way that all of those things overlap is that they're hard. Because the competition is incredible, right? You're not going to accidentally get good at any of those things. You're not going to accidentally be a world-class opera singer. You're not going to accidentally have an amazing physique or amazing strength. You're not going to accidentally have an amazing business. So all of those things are hard, and the skill of being comfortable while uncomfortable. I stole that from CrossFit, by the way, so I can't take credit for that one. Like that in and of itself is a skill. And when you get really good at that, when you get okay looking stupid at the beginning, then you're limitless.
Nice. Thanks for the plug, man. I know it wasn't exactly a plug, but pretty darn close. Okay, I actually got a question on that one. So hard is a skill that's built up. I like the idea that you have to be the fool before you become the sage, and the difficulty is there. Where is it do you find, and even you can speak from your own personal experience on this one, where is it do you find that people, other than it being obviously hard, but do you find that there is a moment or a thought or just a period in someone's journey where they find themselves at, like what we were talking about before, at the point where they expect it to be hard, and now they finally get to feel what that hard is like? How do you get through that? How would you get through that if you did not practice that mental resiliency?
It's remarkable how often this comes up, right? In all aspects. And I think the last thing of what you said there, I think is really important. If you haven't practiced that mental resiliency, and I don't think it's possible to be an adult in 2023 in any country. I mean, I think we both live in North America, right? So extremely lucky as far as like we're both white dudes in North America. We're living life on easy mode, right? So if we getting to this stage in life for anybody, you've gone through some hard stuff, right? Like it's impossible not to. Everyone's definition of hard is different, right? But if it feels hard, then you're right. It is. So practicing that, I don't think that that's necessarily a valuable thing to look for, but instead think about your history and say, what's the hardest thing I've ever done? What are some of the hardest things I've ever done? oh, okay, I have done hard things. Can I do hard things? Can I continue to do hard things? Okay, I guess I have this piece of experience and this piece of experience and this piece of experience that proves that I can. Maybe I can do another one. Is it worth trying? Yeah, maybe, probably. Let's find out. Because I think everyone knows that, to accomplish anything great, it's going to be hard. And this is what hard feels like, as you mentioned earlier, before we started recording. And I like to say all the time that there are no treasures behind an unlocked door. Mm. So if you want hard things, you're going to have to break some locks. Or if you want great things, you're going to have to break some locks. And that's hard. You ever tried to break down a locked door? It's hard.
No, that's
and
fantastic.
Hard is good. Everybody always says growth is uncomfortable. And then they get uncomfortable and they get shy. And they try to hide. And that's a great way to stay exactly where you're at and not grow. If that's your goal, awesome. You did it. Congratulations. But if you're listening to the Limitless Life podcast, chances are that's not your goal.
Yeah. Going from average to excellent, from mediocrity to badass.
Yeah. And I don't think that people are prepared for that process to suck. Right? Because everybody only sees the beginning and the end of the Rocky movies, right? They forget about the montage. And the montage in the movie takes like what, 2, 3, 4 minutes? And all we do is go back and listen to Eye of the Tiger and think about him like climbing the steps of the Philadelphia Art Museum, like, that's great. And at the end, Adrian, right? And those are the moments we remember. We still listen to Eye of the Tiger when we're working out, but the montage in real life, even in boxing, right? The montage in that movie covers months of time. In real life, that montage could be years of time in the slog, in the work, like beating up dead cows and like climbing a mountain with a log on your back. Like that's hard. That sucks. So go into it expecting it to suck. I don't know if it's picking it up, but on the bottom of my squat rack there, I'm trying to move my hand in a weird way. And like, it just says, embrace the suck. Because it's gonna. It's nothing you can do about it, but you can be a hell of a lot better for it once you get through it.
So what do you think is the separator between, so the suck is gonna be there no matter what. What's the difference between people who struggle to make progress and the ones that flourish?
I think this is super cliche, right? And you've probably heard it a million times. But it always boils down to the why. Like, why are you really doing this? And a really helpful exercise that I've used is get a blank sheet of paper. And for me as the occasional writer, as the occasional creative person, a blank sheet of paper can be kind of scary because it's unlimited possibility. And you have to make those choices. And making choices is the scariest thing that anyone will ever have to do. And so you get a blank sheet of paper and you have unlimited choices. Oh my gosh, what happens? You think too long about it, you have an existential crisis. So don't think too much, but get that blank sheet of paper and write down your why. Then write down a different one. Then write down a different one. Then write down a different one. And do that until you have at least 20 whys. This might take you an hour. It often takes me all day. And then once you have all 20 of those, at least, then go through and read them and see what feels true. Right? We were talking before we started recording about the why behind weight loss, right? Because both of us deal with weight loss on a daily basis, right? Mm-hmm. People who want to lose weight, and that's a super common goal in North America. I forget the statistic, but something like half of all adult North Americans are either overweight or obese. And if you go around the world, it's at least in this hemisphere, it's pretty similar, right? So the thing with oh gosh, I totally lost my train of thought there. I'm so sorry.
All good. You're brain dumping the why. You were going through, and
Yes, the
then
why.
give her.
Um, the why behind weight loss, often the first one is, because I didn't like the way I looked in this shirt, or because my pants are not fitting. Okay. Uh, and then what are the other 20 reasons? And eventually you have to start digging deep into your mind and going, what's really motivating this? Maybe it's because I, you know, I've always hated the way that I felt about myself. I mean, it kind of was for me in my case. And it took that, can we swear on this podcast? I
Yo,
forget.
yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
great. It
Fuck
took,
yes.
great. Hell yeah. It took that asshole teacher in the moment to say, like, hey, this is a truth. And in retrospect, he's probably right. If you look at people who are getting the kind of jobs I used to go out for, they're the whole like fat lady with horns on her head for an off, like that's not a thing anymore. It's not a thing anymore. There's too much competition to allow yourself to have that look. This casting director is gonna immediately go with someone who sings just as well, but also happens to be more attractive. Is that right? Is that fair? No, of course not. But I don't get to choose right and fair. I only get to look at the world and say what and see what's happening. So you got to dig deep and find your why so that you can go back to it in those moments when it's hard. Because if you don't have it, if you're only trying to lose, 2 or 3 pounds, so that you can look prettier than Sherry at work, but in reality, you're dealing with, you've never felt good about yourself because you've always hated the way that your belly presses against your clothing, or, maybe, I mean, if we're going super deep, right? Maybe your mom or your parents said something to you when you were a child that you might not even remember, right? But then now we're getting into psychology. I'm not going to pretend to be Freud or anything like that. But that stuff happens, right? Like that's a real thing. So if you don't really know what you're doing and feel successful in the small victories along the way, then you're going to end up quitting. The hard is going to outweigh the benefit.
I like that. That's pretty sweet. So to go on to a more personal question, just because I think it's a cool question.
Yeah.
What do I need to know about your youth and your past in order to understand the person that is right in front of me?
Well, I came in second a lot. I came in second a lot. So growing up, and I've been overweight for as long as I can remember, right? From birth to 19, I was overweight as far as I can tell, even looking at pictures. But I would still, I would play baseball in Little League. I used to love playing Little League baseball. And now, like, you invite me to a pickup baseball or softball game, I will move mountains to be there. But every time I would go into these leagues, it feels like my team would always make it to, the final game, the World Series of Connecticut Little League, right? But we would always lose. And even once I got more into music, it felt very, very often like I would be cast as the supporting character. And, I would get the lead every now and then, and that was great, and that was fun. But I always felt like I was number two. And I kind of always felt like I had a rival. And I won't name names, but I'm thinking about them in my head right now. I know exactly who they are. Even now, 10, 15 years later, I'm like, yep, this person was my rival for that one part in the high school play. This guy beat me in Little League when we were 12, like literally. And so I think because of that, I've always been a chaser. So now I've done my best to take that impulse and harness it for my own benefit, right? Because I've learned that about myself, that I like to have someone to chase. So I'll try and find those people. And I won't tell them that I'm making them a rival, right? Because that's not a great spot to put them into. But I mean, since I'm talking to you, Kyle, straight up, I saw that post that you put on Instagram where you're like as chiseled as all hell and your hair is all done. You're like, it's a gorgeous photograph.
Thanks, man.
a piece of me is like, did someone draw that, or is that actually Kyle? I don't know. But now I'm like, oh damn, like if that's real, is that all right? All right, Kyle, I see you. I can't grow my hair like that. I'm not going to try, but maybe we'll see. We'll see. And so that's I like to have rival. I prefer the term rival to role model, right? And I don't really know why that is, but I've ever since I was little, I'm a chaser, and I like to. If I'm the strongest person in my workout group, I'm going to find a new group. If I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm going to find a new room. I suppose I like that small fish, big pond feeling.
Oh, I love that. I love that the idea of the rival to the role model. I think I think I might actually adopt that because it just actually had a click in my brain where I'm like, oh, so I think that is absolutely such a great frame of mind, because oftentimes we find ourselves aspiring to be like someone rather than compete with someone. We can still learn the tactics that our competitors, we can still learn the tactics that our competitors have implemented in order to benefit us, of course, which is good because then it practices humility, and it reduces the ego, because you're not going to be able to learn from someone if you already think you're hot shit. But then if we actually look at it from a rival standpoint, I actually find that, like, even just thinking about it, I'm like, okay, I feel like a little extra drive, like a little, oh, like a little perk. It's like a perk. It's like, I like thinking of gamification of life. And we were talking about before time.
Yeah.
And the thing that's different between real life and video games, or the montage, sorry. So the Rocky montage, that's what we were talking about.
Oh, right.
That 2 minutes, right? Similar to video games, we still put in the time, we still put in the effort of accomplishing the main quest or side quests in order to develop XP points and level up and skill acquisition to foster or increase our skill tree. And the only variable that's different is that time, that condensed amount of time. I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, I think having a rival, like, it's our main boss. Like, who's our main boss? And it's like, okay, well, we have to accomplish the quests in order to get to the boss, in order to, well, in this case, let's go with a little bit more of a positive way, to be able to meet them and say, thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for your experience. Thank you for learning all the mistakes so that I don't have to.
I feel like that's one of the big differences. Like you mentioned just briefly, like 2 seconds before we started recording, the hero's journey. And so my head is on that, right? And I feel like you need a mentor, undoubtedly. You need at least one mentor. And also you need to find a mentor who's expensive. You gotta pay, right? We didn't talk about that at all, but I think the financial pain is important for you to actually drive into something, right? But you got to have a mentor to say thank you to, and a rival to say fuck you to, right?
Writing that down.
I just came, man, I'm proud of that. I just came up with that right now.
Dude, you're on fire.
You got to be grateful. You got to be humble, but you also got to drive, and you got to know that you're worth it. And you got to, like, I think this is very true of a lot of athletes, right? Or a lot of people who are high performers or who want to be high performers. That youngest sibling kind of thing of like, I got to prove myself. Like, and I'm a youngest sibling as well. I got an older sister. That, like, I got to prove myself. I got to earn it. I got to this. I got to that. Right. I think that's very common. And you can either let it eat you alive, or you can harness it and let it drive you. Know that about yourself, and then push into it in a productive, hopefully healthy, or usually healthy, I should say, way, because it can consume you at the same time, right? You know, this the answer is never black and white. It's always a shade of gray. So it's important to know those roles in your life. And, like, hell, just yesterday I spent another $7,000 on a new mentor, right? Like maybe that's why I said that, to justify my own actions. But it's gotta hurt to pay them, or you'll never really listen.
That's totally legit, man. That's probably what's that saying, or not a saying? There's obviously we're talking stats. When we talked about before, it's like what's that stat? It's like 68% of all stats is false, including
Yeah,
this one or something like that.
yeah, something crazy like
So I
that.
was gonna say some sort of stat that I was gonna make up, but I forget what it is. But however, there is the possibility. So how you're saying, I just paid for a $7,000 coach. Within the first 24 to 48 hours, we usually oftentimes experience some form of buyer's remorse.
Absolutely.
I
Oh man.
think you're I think you're currently countering your mental objections.
I mean, fingers crossed. I literally, like, they sent me the invoice. I literally had my wife come in to click, like, I put in all the information. She clicked the pay button because I was having difficulty bringing myself to do it. Uh, because that's one of the hard things, right? That's the first hard thing that you often have to overcome. And when you're talking with people about training, right? Someone who's never trained before, hey, why haven't you ever hired a coach before? Oh, it's expensive. It is. Yeah, it should be. Is it important? Absolutely. But what's more important to you? Is it the dollars, or is it the benefit of having a coach? Right. And we can, we can spend a decade talking about just that, I'm sure. But I tell this to people on first meeting very regularly. But if you look at how a person spends their time, their money, and their attention, you can often predict their future.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
let's look at how you're spending your time, your money, and your attention. Cool. It's resulted in exactly where you are, because you get what you deserve, whether you like it or not. The body you have, the finances you have, the life you have is a direct result of the actions that you have taken, and you get exactly what you deserve. Right. And of course, there's external factors that play a part in that you can't overcome. Right. But it doesn't mean that they're insurmountable. And if you believe that that's not true, if you believe that the thing you're facing is insurmountable, guess what? You're going to fail. So I don't care what issue you're dealing with. If you can find one example of someone who has overcome it, they have now proven that it's possible. And no human is special. Right? This is another thing that I get flack for sometimes. No one is special. I'm not special. You're not special, Kyle. I'm sorry. I have to break that to you. Listener, watcher, I'm sorry. You're also not that special. Our parents lied to us, right? But you're not so special that other people can do things that you can't. And anyone who you are looking at, your heroes, are not that special. There was a song that came out, AWOL Nation, I think it was AWOL Nation, and the song is something along the lines of kill your heroes, right? And I'm gonna butcher this, so AWOL Nation fans, I'm sorry, but I remember listening to it when I was living in Victoria, BC. On my way to and from the liquor store that I was working at, and that's a different conversation. And it was like, oh man, this song, like, it's a crazy awesome, like, rock, get you going. You can listen to it for a workout for sure. But basically, the message that I took from it was that your heroes are not that special. And I think that's part of the rival versus role model. Anybody in the world can be your rival because you can compete with them. In my mind, role models are on a mountaintop and you can aspire to it, but actually attaining it can sometimes feel unachievable. If someone's your rival, you're suddenly at the same level, or at least close enough to make it worth it.
I think something that's a really cool frame on that one. I'm just kind of looking at the visual, trying to picture it together, just because I work well with pictures, I guess. I'm like a child on the inside, I'm kind of envisioning how the role model's on the top of the mountain, right? And the rival is the person that you're competing next to in order to get to that role model, per se. And I think that that could also be used as a frame between, but that is the visual, that the climb up the mountain is that montage. The rival is your past self. The role model is your future self. And you're the one that's putting the steps in.
I like it. That's great.
I'm pretty pumped about that one.
That's great.
Dude, honestly, I just gotta say, like, I really love that you need a rival to say fuck you to, you need a role model to say thank you to. And that would tie in really well where you have the role model where I think of Snoop Dogg. When Snoop Dogg got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and he's like chilling and he's like accepting his award. He's like, I just want to thank me for being for being my best supporter, for putting in the work. I want to thank me for being persistent and continuing on. He didn't say persistent, but that's the main idea.
Whatever.
And I really like that. I think that because I was thinking about humility. And I think that when you have an undeniable amount of proof that you are whatever, that it is not ego, it is humility, understanding. It is humble to understand an objective truth because you're not bringing down your accomplishments in order to, I'm not exactly sure where I'm going with this, but it sounds interesting, in order to pretend to be less humble or pretend to be more humble. I think if someone has an objective truth where so-and-so had awesome progress, and if someone says, wow, you're looking amazing, it's okay to say, yeah, thanks. Or, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And a lot of people find it awkward to accept praise because they don't want to be held onto a pedestal. But I think when we look at like the objective facts where it's like, shit, you do look good. Like, it's okay to be like, yeah, I know I look good because the objective truth is that I put in the effort.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting.
Yeah. People are so bad at taking compliments. Oh man, they're so bad at it.
Why do you think that is?
I think it comes from insecurity.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Do you think the insecurity is do you think the insecurity is do you think it could be the do you think it could be the self-perception of the person doesn't match the compliment from the external source?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. 100%. Right. So from what I've seen and my own experience, right, because this is something that I struggle with too sometimes, it can often be difficult to accept praise for something that you don't feel you've done yet. And so much of the time, the praise is meant to, make you feel good and all that stuff that's important. But people only, so this goes back to what we're talking about in the montage bit, right? People only see the beginning and the end, right? They see Rocky at the beginning, getting his shit kicked in, and then they see him at the end, bloody face, shouting Adrian with the flag wrapped around him, looking like the incredible hero, right? And the montage in between that takes 2 or 3 minutes on film encapsulates months and years potentially of training, right? And what we have to remember as real humans who don't have a film crew editing our montage together is that we have to live every single one of those seconds 1 second at a time. So the same way that, if Rocky was a real human, he would actually have to take all of those steps. Whereas I bet in the movie, they helicoptered him in, put a fake log on his shoulders and said, cool, trudge, like take 10 steps through the snow so we can get this awesome helicopter shot, right? Like that's probably what happened in real life. But we don't have that luxury as actual humans. So we have to live every second of that montage 1 second at a time. The way that you can survive that, sometimes quite literally survive that, is by giving yourself those small victories along the way. So in your head, you say, cool, I'm 200 pounds now. I'm going to get to 150 pounds. And I just picked that to make math easy. And you don't reward yourself until you have lost all 50 of those pounds. But you're going to experience a huge amount of change in between point A and point B. You're going to look totally different at 175 than you did at 200. Like 25 pounds, you take 25 pounds of fat off someone, other people are going to notice, right? If you reduce your body size by what's that, 12.5%, other people are going to notice. And they're going to say, hey, man, you're doing a great job. You look great. But it's so hard for us as humans to accept praise for something that we only feel half done for. Because in our mind, we've still got 25 pounds to lose. And it's true. If your goal is 150 and you're at 175, you still got 25 pounds to lose. So you need to have this really, really difficult balance of ambition and contentment 100% of the time.
That's pretty freaking cool. Yeah, you're totally right, man. So what do you think the way to, how would you accept the praise? How can you practice? Like, let's turn it into like a mental method or a mental framework of the objective being, I want to fully accept, take in, and appreciate the person that is admiring the effort I am putting in without decreasing something like that. Something stewing. What do you think on that?
Okay, this is going to start off sounding really bad, but stick with me. Stick with me for a second. From what I can tell, the majority of humans, I think we spoke earlier about blanket statements and how I try to avoid them, but I'm going to use some, so I'm sorry. Humans are selfish. Baseline, bottom line. If someone's doing something, chances are they have something to gain from it. So when someone gives you a compliment, are they trying to make you feel good? Are they trying to say, hey, I see you, I acknowledge what you're doing? Probably yes. But also, they have something to gain from giving you that compliment. Maybe it's increasing the relationship. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's they're looking for you to tell them how you're doing what you're doing, so they can learn how to improve themselves, right? So humans are selfish. There's no such thing as true charity. Like, this is all like potentially dark stuff, and we could go down that tunnel. But when someone gives you a compliment, it's an opportunity for you as a human to give them something back. So be grateful that they gave you that compliment, right? Even if you don't believe that it's true, especially if you don't believe that it's true. Be grateful for the compliment, and then ask yourself, okay, what does this person stand to gain from giving me this compliment? And then try to fulfill that for them.
I like that, because then it actually closes a loop too.
Yeah.
Because then you're actually fulfilling the reciprocation. So it helps from a psychological standpoint too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If we want to talk about reciprocation, like have you read the Cialdini book, Influence?
I have not, but I think I actually have it, but I have not.
Book you haven't read? Come on, Kyle.
I'll write it down right now.
It's dense, but it's amazing. And in that book, there's a story about the Hare Krishna. And so what they would do is they would give these cheap, like 2-penny flowers out to people. And they had I'm gonna drop my pen. And they would have very specific clothing on, like these robes of a certain color that like stood out in a New York subway. right? So you would know. And so when you're getting off the train, there's people just giving away these flowers, right? And they're cheap plastic flowers. And then you climb the steps of the subway, and lo and behold, there's someone with the exact same robe on, so they're very easily identifiable as connected, accepting donations for their organization. And if you received a flower 10 seconds ago, 10 steps ago, the chances that you would give a donation were unreasonably high. And so they would give you a half-penny flower, and then you would give them $1. And chances are you would throw away the flower. And then sometimes the Hare Krishnas would go to where you threw away the flower, pick up the flower, and give it to the next person. And then they would get another $1. And so that's how powerful reciprocation can be. And I think subconsciously, we often know that. So we don't want to be in debt to anyone. So when someone gives you a compliment, that little voice in the back of your head, your subconscious, your old brain, goes, "Oh, now I'm in debt to this person. So maybe I don't want to accept the compliment." Like, that's the first way to not be in debt, is to not accept. But then you just made the other person feel like shit, potentially. And then you're still in debt to them, because now you made them feel bad, and so you have to make up for that somehow, right? So accept the compliment, say, "Hey, thank you, I've been putting in a lot of work." But don't undercut it and be like, "Hey, yeah, I've been putting in a lot of work, but I still got more to do." No, accept the compliment, and then say, "What are you working on? Is this something you've been thinking about?" Make the conversation about the giver of the compliment. And I find that makes it so much easier to accept that and to feel better about yourself. Because yeah, losing 25 pounds and you got a 50-pound weight loss goal, like, that's a big fucking deal. You deserve praise for that. You don't deserve so much praise that you say, "Oh, I'm good now, I can give up. I lost 25 pounds. I never thought I would lose 25 pounds. Setting 50 was unrealistic." Bullshit. How often do you come across someone who's like, I want to lose 10 or 20 pounds. Okay, cool. Is that a stepping stone, or is that like your ultimate goal? "No, I really want to lose 110, but I want to set a realistic goal." Fuck realistic. Man, that's the biggest load of shit. See, now I'm on a tangent.
It's all good.
I hope that's okay.
No, I think I actually just, like, on that part where I like thinking of it like, I find that people struggle because they set unrealistic goals, or no, sorry, they set realistic goals with unrealistic expectations. And we should flip it so that we set unrealistic goals, but we have realistic expectations of the tactics that we can do on a regular basis.
I love that. Can I propose one little change?
Give her.
People set realistic goals because every goal is realistic. People set realistic goals with unrealistic time frames. Right? Like, it would be completely unrealistic in 1990 to start Amazon.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what year Amazon started, right? It was somewhere in the 90s, I think. Right? But I know it's not that old of a company. I think you and I are both older than Amazon, and we're not old.
Yeah. Totally. I think it was 1990, and it just started with books. It was just, it was book delivery. Yeah, it would have been 1990s, easily to early 2000s. Anyways.
Right. But if Bezos said at the beginning, "Hey, I'm going to start a company, and it's going to end up being one of the largest companies in the world, and I'm going to be one of the richest people in the world, and I'm going to have, my yacht is going to be so big that it has another yacht inside of it," right? That's unrealistic. It's completely unrealistic. But guess what? He did it. And like, we can have a moral conversation about Amazon and Bezos later. That doesn't support my point, so I'm pushing it aside for now. But he set what any other human would say is an unrealistic goal, gave himself an unreasonable amount of time to do it. And then he did. And he put effort in every single day. And he accomplished the goal. And now Amazon has shaped the way that we live our lives in many ways. Like, a lot of what I have behind me is from Amazon. And a lot of what I'm looking at is also from Amazon. And again, I can't say if that's, morally or ethically right. Has he done some unethical things? Probably. I don't know what they are, but I leave that to greater minds than mine to figure out. But I do know that he started something and it grew into an unreasonably financially successful enterprise. So if someone can go from selling a book out of his parents' garage to owning a yacht that also owns a yacht, why can't you lose 75 pounds? Bezos, not that special.
Totally. And it's cool because we also just need that one person to actually show us that it is possible. I think that not even more often than not, I'm with almost certainty. There's always people that will be like, no, but I think it's interesting when just using an example like nutrition, for example, when someone says, oh, that won't work for me, but it's worked for thousands of other people. So I wonder, it kind of piggyback off of what you said earlier, no one's special. So I like thinking of the question, what makes you so special? That's what has worked for thousands of others will not work for you. And I think so that's from the mass to the small, and then going for the objective part where it's like, I want to accomplish this. When we get to find that person who is our role model or our rival, I love that you said that, man. That is just fire. But I find that when I want to do something, I will find at least one person that has already done it. Mm-hmm. And then I have an immediate flip in my mind where I think, okay, no, I can absolutely do it because one other person did it. And they're no different than myself. We're all sourced from the exact same point in time where it's just a sun exploded and now we're just here spontaneously. It's 400 trillion to 1 for either of us and any human that's listening to this exists. It takes I like thinking of this is like a cool example, but if our parents were 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 30 seconds or 10 seconds off in meeting, we wouldn't exist. So then that's just our parents meeting. Then we go all the way back to the source point in time where things just, whatever the individual's belief is, one thing we know for certain is that where things have been created, there had to be a start point. So from that start point all the way to this point, all that shenanigans had to happen in order to get to this point, which is so crazy. But being able to see that one person was able to do even the bare minimum of what you aspire to do as a lifelong goal or objective or passion or purpose or a vision, I think just riding like the idea that someone else can do it, so why can't I? And there's no information for the most part indicating an individual cannot accomplish the same thing in my mind.
Absolutely. There's only evidence that if one individual can do it, so can every other. So I feel like the mentality that you just described is everyone is kind of the opposite of the way that I think, but you end up doing the same thing. And that's what's really important, right? Mm-hmm. I like to think no one is special. It sounds like what you just described is that everyone is incredibly special.
Oh, I think
but if everyone is the same level of special, it doesn't matter where that level is. Everyone is capable of doing the same thing. Maybe I'm just an asshole that thinks no one is special. I don't.
Honestly, I don't think you're an asshole at all. What I think is important, actually, in my takeaway of the two different kind of perspectives, is It's about finding the perspective that fits with where you want to go and not just accepting one perspective. So for example, I got the question where do you think life has purpose or meaning? I personally think that life has both no meaning and all meaning. And the reason I think that is because if you look at the expanse of the universe, we're just little finite, spontaneous creations that happen by fluke. So it's unique, it's meaningful because of the finite amount of time that we get to experience our surroundings. But when we zoom out, it doesn't matter. It's not meaningful. There's nothing that's going to be remembered from anyone 5,000 years from now, or maybe like 10,000. We'll say 10,000.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the time that we have is short, and so the only meaning that matters is the meaning we ascribe.
I like that too. And I think so, going with everything, being persistent on finding that thing no matter what. So it's like maybe it's not a pleasure-based goal, it's a pain-based goal.
Sure.
And if it's like, oh well, like the pleasure-based goal doesn't really work for me. Okay, so what's your pain-based goal? I think when folks are wanting to accomplish something, and the moment they find the resistance, like I don't have the right narrative, then it's done. And then they just stop looking. But I think if someone really wants something, or if I want something bad enough, I will continue to search for the narrative that fits the outcome I want, rather than accepting the narrative that I've just came up with.
Yeah. So I use this on first meetings pretty regularly. And I think it just reinforces your point. You know who Usain Bolt is, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. For anyone who might not, he's pretty quick when it comes from going to 0 to 100 meters. He's pretty quick. His world record may have been beaten recently. I'm not sure. I don't keep up to date on track. I compete in strongman, not track. We're very different. But for a long time, he was the fastest man in the world in the 100-meter, the 200, and I think also the 400. Jamaican guy, 6'5", gorgeous, all that great stuff. At the finish line for him was money, was fame, was legacy, was potentially power. Like it was all of these amazing things. And he ran pretty damn fast to get there. I think his world record is something like 9.28 seconds or something like that, which is unreal. Like there are bicycles that don't go that fast. Crazy. But I would bet that he would somehow find a way to run even faster towards that finish line if there was a friggin' lion on his heels. Right? So as an individual, I think we all have to decide, am I running towards the finish line, or am I running away from the lion, or do I get to have best of both worlds? Can I put something tangible and specific that I love at the finish line and something terrifying and horrible and deadly at the start line? And of course, this varies from situation to situation, to person. There's a huge amount of variance in it, right? There I go, covering my ass from making blanket statements again.
Nice.
But what I can tell you from my own personal experience is the times that I have been the most successful in accomplishing the biggest things over the longest period of time, I had both. Undoubtedly, I had both. Even with the business right now, I do my best to give myself both every single time. Right? The lion right now for me is that I don't get to prove that I'm worth a damn to that teacher who told me that I was too fat when I was 19. Right? I have to prove that. I'm the youngest sibling. I have to prove myself every step of the way. And of course, what's across the finish line is the same thing as Usain Bolt, right? I mean, who doesn't want to have an unlimited supply of money? Who doesn't want to have power? Who doesn't want to have legacy? Who doesn't want to have all those things? Of course. Who doesn't? Like, that's great. Cool thing about business, of course, is that it's an infinite game. So the way you win is you get to keep playing. And the only way to lose is to go out of business and to stop playing the game. So I don't know where I don't have a nice button to put on that. But
No, I thought that was great, man. Go
give
ahead.
give yourself a lion and a finish line, and you'll be more successful.
There was a study that was done, studies, but there was one that was done with mice, and it's riffing off of the idea that you got there, but it was yeah. So there's mice, and they were put into a cage, and they attached like a little fake piece of cheese to a pulley system so that they could measure the strength of the mouse that was pulling the cheese, right?
Sure.
And so they put like the smell of cheese through this weight. I'm just going to say weight to test the pressure or pull strength. And they found that the mice that would go in with just the cheese smell would be a little bit more casual, and they would pull just enough. So if they were in the cage, no smell was going in, they wouldn't do anything. The smell of cheese, they would go and be more casual. And then they did another one where they did the smell of cheese, and then behind them, the smell of a cat.
Oh.
And they found that their overall strength increased, where they went to the cheese faster, they were able to pull harder, but they had that combination of pleasure and pain. They had both motivational markers.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Why pick one to only have when you could have both, right? Use all the tools at your disposal.
Absolutely. So this is a question that I really like asking folks. It's a repeat one, but I think it's enjoyable because I don't think enough people talk about love. And there's a lot of love in my podcast. Like everyone's just been amazing. So what role does love play in building, creating, and developing for you?
See, now that you asked me that question, I remember you asking that question to other people and thinking, man, that's a great question. And even though I was half expecting it, I don't have a great answer off the top of my head. What role does love have in creation? I think is
Yep.
You used some more eloquent words, and I'm sorry they escaped me off the top of my head.
No, building, creating, and developing. Creation is totally fine.
Building, creating, and developing. Okay. And I think that goes a lot towards the pleasure and pain that we were just talking about, right? The pleasure is the love. You have to have it, right? If it's not there, then when things get hard, you're not going to feel like it's worth it, and so you're going to give up. And that's a real thing. So with whatever you're trying to build, if you don't love it, if you don't either love the thing or love the way the result of the thing makes you feel, then you're sunk. Your motivations are not strong enough to make it actually happen. So it's an important part of the equation for sure, no matter what. And you have to, I think, loving the result of the thing or the way that the result makes you feel is even more important than loving the things that you're doing. Because there's going to be horrible parts of anything that you try. It doesn't matter what that thing is, right? In business, in education, in life, like there's going to be bad parts of it. There's going to be some times where you got to embrace the suck. But if you don't love the way that the thing makes you feel, at least sometimes, then there's no point in actually doing it. And you'd give up on it. That's honestly why I stopped playing baseball, right? At least competitively.
Fair enough.
Because I at one point I loved it. It was great. And then the love kind of went away. And so I found something else that I loved. I think people find that they're sometimes have a limited supply of love. And I don't think that that's true, because it's boundless, it's limitless, and you create it out of nothing every time.
That's so true. That's a fan for not having an answer off the top of your head. That was a fantastic answer, my man. That
I
was
just kind
so
of let
good.
myself start talking, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and just trust what comes out of your mouth. You're like, hopefully this is just like the truest truth. Here we go.
Fingers crossed I don't fall all over the place and smack my face on something. But yeah, I mean, the more I think about that, the more I think it's true. I mean, love is limitless because it can be created from nothing. And it only gets created inside your own mind and then expressed through your actions. So yeah, love and really the expression of love is everything. It's only half of the equation, like we were just talking about. You got to have some pain behind it potentially too. But if you don't have that half, you're sunk before you begin.
It's hard to recognize the feeling of love when we don't understand or we have not experienced the feeling of pain. I have to have the contrast in order to find the sweet spot in between, the Goldilocks zone.
Goldilocks zone. It's all about the
man.
Goldilocks zone.
Okay, I had a couple other questions, but usually I like to try. I like to leave the podcast on a note where it just highlights the good vibes of the guest. And I'm not really sure if. Well, I'll just have to have you on again.
I'm down.
And that would be awesome. And one day I will do in person, and I'm just gonna make my way down to Phoenix, and I'll just have you in person, and it'll be freaking so weird.
That'd be great.
That's kind of like my that's one of my visions for the podcast is like I want to do a travel one so I can just go hang out with cool people and selfishly learn from people. Try to make me smart. That is awesome. Well, my friend, I got 2 final questions for you. I love them. They're fun. For those of you that are listening, I'm going to switch up the how do you define a limitless life question with another one. Hopefully you like it. Be sure to message me and let me know what you think. So, my friend, Ted, first question, going to set the scene for you. It's the end of your life. You're on your deathbed. There is no content. This podcast doesn't exist. You have your loved ones around you. What is a piece of advice you want to pass on to others?
I think the most succinct way that I can put it is that growth is supposed to be uncomfortable.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And then for the last one, this is the cool one. I think it's going to be cool. So, the best Ted, the best you is hanging out right next to you and wants to give you a piece of advice for the season that you're in. And it could be whatever kind of main points are there, struggles, ambitions, insights. What advice does the best Ted, the best of you, give you for your season?
Trust and work solves all problems.
I'm going to write that down. I like that. That is awesome. Go ahead.
I'm tempted to like justify and say what that means, but
go for it.
Yeah,
go for it. Yeah,
I'm torn on that. Like, do I want to justify or do I just want to drop it and leave?
I see.
Right. I mean, because you have to trust that your past experiences are going to treat you well, and you have to trust that that the mentors that you've given a bunch of money to are going to have your best interest at heart, and you have to trust that you are strong enough to take what the world gives you and work to the point that it becomes valuable. You don't get to choose if what the world gives you is valuable, you only get what the world gives you. So you have to work to make it valuable.
Oh man, that's a fan. I'm glad that you elaborate on that. Although it would have been a pretty interesting mic drop at that point, but that's a fantastic. That's awesome. I love that, dude. All right, folks. That's what I've got for you for this episode. Where can people find you, Ted?
They can find me on all the social medias at either High Note Performance or High Note _performance. You can find the website at highnoteperformance.fit. Make sure you go to .fit. If you go to highnoteperformance.com, you will end up at a motorcycle apparel company in New Delhi. That was a total accident. I started the company before I found that out, but highnoteperformance.fit. If you want to get in touch directly, you can, go through Instagram. You can email me at ted@highnoteperformance.fit. And I would love to talk more, continue this conversation. Didn't even get to the cool neurology stuff that I like to do. But anyone who, has questions about anything that I said or wants to learn more, that's how you find me.
Nice. I'm definitely going to have you on again for the neurology part. Absolutely, without a doubt, dude.
Totally down.
All right, folks, if you loved today's episode, please do me a favor right now. Share it on your Instagram stories and tag me with my handle at Warrior Body Kyle, along with at High Note _performance. That is one of the ways that we grow. And until next time, I hope your day treats you as good as you look.